Explore the history, relationships, expertise, and data that go into ensuring Stein growers get maximum yield potential. This is the Stein Seedcast. Here's your host, David Thompson.
Hello, and welcome to the Stein Seedcast. I'm your host, David Thompson, National Marketing and Sales Director for Stein Seed Company. We've got another great episode lined up with special guests, expert insights, and discussion on everything you need to know about maximizing yield potential. On today's episode, we continue our month-long celebration of Women in Ag by taking a look back at some of our past Women in Ag interviews. This week's episode includes conversations with educators and industry leaders who have blazed their way in agriculture and encouraged other women to do the same. We'll hear comments from FFA advisors Jennifer Marion and Mackenzie Gettler, as well as an interview we did with President of Kinsey Manufacturing, Suzanne Kinzenbaugh-Veach, discussing their backgrounds in ag and advice they have for young women pursuing a career in the field. So let's get started. Joining me as co-host is Stein's sales support team lead, Renee Schmidt. Renee's been a Stein employee for about 5 years now, and actually been a woman in ag even longer than that. She and her husband, Marty, live on an acreage just outside of Adel, Iowa, where they raise livestock and they have 4 children. Renee, thanks for joining us as a co-host for March.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. On today's episode, we're joined by Susie Kinzenbaugh-Veach. Susie is the president of Kinsey Manufacturing, which is a family-owned global agricultural equipment company. This is headquartered in Williamsburg, Iowa. Susie is the daughter of Marcia and John Kinzenbaugh. John started the company in 1965, and Susie joined the family business as a second generation in 2005. Prior to joining Kinsey, Susie worked for Caterpillar as a systems analyst. She graduated from Iowa State University with a double major in business and spent many hours in the summer working in the business. We're excited to have Susie on today's show to talk about her path in the ag industry and what makes her proud to be a woman in ag. Welcome to the show, Susie.
Thanks so much for having me.
So tell us about you. Give us your background.
Okay, well, I grew up in rural Iowa, near Williamsburg, Iowa, which is where our family business is. And I grew up on a row crop farm. We didn't have any livestock, just crops. And then, of course, we had the family business.
And where'd you go to college?
Graduated from Iowa State University, business major.
Very good. All right. And how do you apply your degree today?
You know, it's interesting. College is obviously a great experience, and I think a must-have for anyone who's able to do it. You know, I think college teaches us a lot about teamwork and learning foundations, but when it comes to getting into the workplace, as for me anyway, when I joined the workforce out of college, you know, there's a lot to learn on the job that college doesn't ever prepare us for in a lot of ways. So, you know, what I liked about Iowa State is it's an agricultural campus, you know, as well as they do a lot of other great things there, very good in business. I went down the business path just because I felt it better suited me for one day likely joining our family business. But I like the fact that, you know, we rub shoulders with the ag and, you know, more rural farming fellow students, just a different atmosphere, I think, than even you feel at, say, the University of Iowa, which, you know, I live in Iowa City, so I live in the other Iowa college community, but I always just enjoyed the atmosphere at Iowa State. It's a beautiful campus. It's got the ag background and just a lot of great kids and professors that I met along the way throughout the process there.
Very good. So did you have a professor or a teacher or mentor, someone that mentored you along the way?
I've had a number of different mentors along the way. You know, growing up, I was always very close to my mom, and my mom is someone that I've always really respected and been able to talk to really about anything. And so, you know, growing up, I had a great relationship with my mom and my dad. But, you know, from a female standpoint, to my mom as a mentor on, you know, what a female is, what a mom is, what a wife is. You know, my mom was a great role model for our family, and she was always very actively involved in, you know, whatever we were doing as a family too, whether it be the business or home life. then, as I got older, I've had different mentors along the way that have been mentors of me for, more the business side of things. And I've had a couple of really great female mentors that have just been great at teaching me, some of the finer, what I call the finer tuning details of just, again, things college doesn't prepare you for, with dealing with people of different types of personalities. When, like, for example, I'm a pretty direct personality, and I'm not shy about speaking my mind when needed. And for someone that's more of an introvert or a processor, that can be a more difficult communication. And I've always liked and enjoyed people and interacting with people, all kinds of different people, even ones that are very different from me. And so my one mentor really helped me with, how to understand the different types of personality styles and how to adapt and adjust my style, to someone who's very opposite of me. And especially in my role, when you're the owner of a company and very involved in the business, it can be intimidating for, me to give my opinion or an idea or something to someone that's maybe a little more introverted and that's not on the management team, So that helped me a lot early on when I came back and joined the business. And then, I've had different female mentors and role models along the way, people that I highly respect that have helped me through, different situations when I've got business challenges where I need to just bounce something off of someone that's not, within the business, and on how you kind of think through and approach some of the different things that may be more people related or whatever the challenge might be. So I've been very fortunate because not everyone has that along the way to have those people in their lives that are very vested in me as a person, and people that, I can talk to and share my thoughts and ideas and opinions with and get advice from.
Suzanne, the Kins and Baugh name is highly regarded in the ag industry and has been for a number of years. I guess I'm curious, as you were growing up, was agriculture something that you just always wanted to be a part of, or was there an inflection point where you thought, yeah, this is really where I want to spend my time and resources? Yeah,
I think growing up, we were just so immersed in agriculture through the business, through our family farm operation, that it was a part of our life and what we did. And so I guess I never really, imagined doing something completely different. At the same time, I always thought I would come back and work for the business, but my dad had always said, if you want to come back, then you go be successful elsewhere first, and that'll give people more of a respect for you when you come back to the business. And I think that was really great advice because, going and working for someone else and kind of establishing who I am and my abilities in a role that's not a family business. I went to work for a very large business out of college, Caterpillar, and that was a really great experience for me in a lot of ways. One, I worked for a very large global business that has, multiple sites, and, at the time they had 75,000 plus employees and were growing. And, then when I did come back to our business, it really helped reinforce in me the appreciation that I had in our business and our people. I always knew we had something very unique here at Kinsey, just in our people and how we do things and the products that we have. But to really grasp and understand and appreciate that, I don't think I fully 100% did until I went and worked for, another large manufacturer. And just, you learn kind of the side of really large business and the side of small business. And there's obviously pros and cons both ways, but just that added appreciation of just the really great people and company that we are and that we have here at Kinsey.
Susie, I hear the manufacturing and the equipment side coming out in you, and obviously we are Stein Seed. And I think sometimes those are two areas of the ag industry that could seem kind of intimidating for women. Do you feel you bring a really unique perspective to the ag industry, being a woman working in the equipment manufacturing side? How do you see that?
Yeah, I would say yes, yes and no. Growing up, my dad just always included me in whatever he was doing, and I loved being outside with him, and it didn't really matter what he was doing, whether it was in a bulldozer, he was moving dirt, or out in business meetings. In the summer, I spent a lot of summers where I'd come to work with him and sit in meetings, with him, or spend part of the day with him as I grew up. So I think I was so immersed in it that I really didn't think about it as male or female in terms of occupation. I mean, obviously, farming back when I was growing up was more male involved, probably as far as career-wise, but there were a lot of women I met along the way that were very involved in their family farm operation too. So I think, for me, I think there's probably maybe less pressure on a daughter following her footsteps than maybe a son, for someone like my dad that is very gifted with ideas and creativity and very gifted with his hands and ability to, build something from nothing and see in things possibility and potential that others can't, just because he's gifted at, looking at things and coming up with new ideas and better ways to make things work. So I think there was probably less pressure on me as a daughter of, people's outside expectations on what they thought I should be or be doing. So I didn't really feel that pressure or that sense of, wow, I've got to follow my dad's footsteps and be exactly like him and do exactly what he's doing in the business. So I've never really felt that way. I mean, I'm mechanically minded and I understand how things work and I know how to operate equipment and use our products. And, I started driving tractors when I was, barely walking with my dad's an avid antique tractor collector. And one of the first tractors he had was a little B Farmall that has the wide rear axle. And so he put a seat on the wide side of the axle beside the driver's seat. And so he'd put me up on there and he even rigged it so he had his own brake and clutch pedal and taught me how to shift the gears and let the clutch out slowly and drive that tractor. And then by about age 7, I was moving his pickup truck, around the farm, not out on the roads, but just around the farm if he needed it moved from point A to point B because he was moving a tractor, a piece of equipment. And then of course I was driving the big tractor and grain cart, probably 8, 9, and 10 years old, probably by age 10 by myself. So, I grew up just in that environment of not being afraid to learn how things work and how to operate them. And so I guess it was just a part of what we did as a family. And I never really thought about it as, is this, something I doing because I'm female or something I wouldn't do because I'm female. I never really thought of it that way. It was just a part of our lives and our family.
Tell us a little bit about, Kinsey Manufacturing, and, probably most of the listeners to our podcast, know about Kinsey, but for the uninitiated, how do you describe your business?
Yeah. So, I think as far as if I were telling someone that didn't know anything about Kinsey, who we are and what we do, I would tell them that we're a manufacturer of row crop planters, grain carts, and high-speed tillage in the agricultural industry. We've got about 650 employees worldwide. Our headquarters are in Williamsburg, Iowa, and then we've got factory and offices in Vilnius, Lithuania that serves our Europe, Eastern Europe, and Russia customers. We're a family-owned business, and I'm the second generation involved in the family business. And, I think as far as what defines who we are, our culture, those are defined by our core values. And back in the 90s, one of the guys that came to work for my dad in management and had worked for him a number of years said, John and Marcia, there's some really unique things about Kinsey and the culture and the company and the people and the way you found the business. And it'd be really great if you guys were able to write down on paper and define what you would call our values or our core values. So my parents went on a family vacation that year to, I believe, Florida, and they drove their motorhome. And so they talked a lot about that, and my dad drove and my mom wrote, and they came up with 5 core values that they felt really were how they started the business and what continues to define us and what should continue to define us, as we move forth, so long as we own it as a family. And those are integrity, customer focus, excellence, innovation, and mutual respect. And, I think something that's interesting about those values is, a lot of companies will create values and put them on the website and post them for all to see when they come and visit. But you might go visit a company and you say, well, I don't really see this modeled anywhere here, but those are nice words on paper. And I think one thing that's really always very rewarding for me and for us as a family is when we have people come to Kinsey, we have many interview candidates that will come here and interview, and before they leave, they will say, hey, these core values that I learned about today, this was modeled in all the people that I interacted with. And I think it's really cool that you guys live these values and they're not just nice words on a paper. So that it's really rewarding to hear that when someone comes to Kinsey and says, I have seen this in how people operate. And it's something that we instill in all of our people that, this is how we want them to do business, so long as they're working for Kinsey. And, obviously, if you don't have integrity, then nothing else matters, right? Because, you're not trusted, and there's all kinds of things that happen once integrity is lost. So that's been something that's always been very important to us as a family. From a values standpoint, I was raised where our faith in God was the foundation of our values, and the values like honesty and hard work ethic, treating others with respect, having a positive attitude, and having urgency to get things done and bring things to completion. Things like that were just part of the values of who my parents were as a family and how we were taught to be. So, again, that feeds right into the business, is we've got to have integrity in all that we do. And then as you look at what got my dad in the business, it was really understanding what challenges does the farmer have in the field, what problem needs solved or fixed, and how can we do things better. And that was that emphasis on customer focus, the customer coming in saying, I have this problem or this frustration, I wish I could do X, Y, Z, but there's nothing out there that will do X, Y, Z. And, that resulting in, the grain cart with large flotation tires that Kinsey is known for having the first in the industry. And today all the grain carts in the market have essentially copied that design. You look at excellence if you were to come and visit us here at Kinsey and tour to our innovation center, to our offices, to our factory, I think you would see, and people often comment, just the excellence they see, not only in the construction of the buildings, like our innovation center, we constructed that ourselves. We made the large open span beams and columns and rolled the siding for it. And then when we added on to it, we added kind of some stone and nicer looking fascia on the outside. But the core of that building, we constructed ourselves, and we made the great big steel beams. And if you were to come and walk through our office, while we didn't fabricate our office, we kind of repeated that type of steel beam column structure, that open structure you can see throughout the building. And again, it's part of who we are as manufacturers of heavy equipment, made out of metal. And as you walk through the factory, seeing that things have a place and order and organization, we don't always do that well, but for the most part, we try to keep it neat and orderly so things go back where they belong, things can be found, that sort of thing. So that, that's just that excellence that kind of permeates not only who we are organizationally, but in the product we build. We build products that are known for their durability and for their excellence. And then, of course, innovation, the creativity and ideas and patents that we've had in our products. I think that's been very evident over the years. And then that last one, mutual respect, just really respecting other people. And I think that's one thing that makes our company so great is, we don't get really hung up on titles here at Kinsey. I mean, we have to have them structurally, but my dad, if you were to meet him in public on the street, you'd just think he was a normal farmer, like, other farmers you meet that are just really great, friendly people. And, he's a man that's obviously a business owner and created this great business that we have, but you wouldn't necessarily know that when you first meet him because, he's just a common down-to-earth person, drives a Chevy pickup truck, very just like any farmer you'd see. So I think that too with our organization is, we as owners, we're not afraid to roll up our sleeves and work alongside our people, and every position is important from the janitor to the executive level. And so we really try to reinforce throughout that no one person is more important than another. It takes all of us working together to make a great product and to do what we do. So I think, as we look at, I guess back to the original question you asked, who is Kinsey and what defines us? I think that's a really important part, those 5 core values of our culture and who we are and how we do business. And then, there's the obvious part of, yes, we make product, but I think that's what uniquely differentiates us are those values, because you see that even in the product and how we interact with farmers in the marketplace. We're not afraid to talk to farmers, and we love to have farmers come here and visit us and get their ideas and understand what isn't working too. It's important to know what frustrates them about our product, what doesn't work like they think it should, because we want to take that feedback and make it better as a result. And it's that ongoing feedback that we need to have as we design and build product.
So, Suzanne, I guess thinking about the growth of your organization, you've had a lot of success and company continues to grow, and with growth comes acquiring talent and acquiring employees. Are you seeing, I guess, compared to, years past, are you seeing more females interested in, the equipment business? I know on our side of the business we are, and it's I think a welcome change that from years past. I guess I'm curious to know if you're seeing that in the equipment side as well.
Yeah. I think that would be a true statement to some degree. I mean, in the office, we've always had female employees. Now, obviously, we've grown a lot over the years, but even out in manufacturing, we have more and more female employees, which is interesting too, because years ago, and I don't know, as far as just comparing our company with others we toured, there were a lot of manufacturing companies where they weren't friendly work environments for women, and you had a lot of crazy things go on maybe with employees that shouldn't have, with maybe some not respecting women like they should. And I know one thing about Kinsey that has been true ever since we've had the business is my dad's always made it very clear, especially out in the factory, that it doesn't matter whether you're male, female, or what race or nationality background you have. We all need to be treated with respect, and that we weren't going to have any tolerance for any kind of negativity of one person negatively treating or calling another person, name calling, that sort of thing. So, and he's, years ago used to tour places and you'd see girly type calendars that were demeaning to women. And my dad always said, we aren't going to have any of that in our factory. It's going to be a place where people are comfortable to come through no matter who they are, what their background is. So I think for us, and as a manufacturing environment maybe has become more female friendly over the years too, we're seeing more and more women apply even to work out in the factory for some of the various jobs we have. And then, as we look at different interns, we have a lot of interns, especially in our engineering group. And, over the years, we've had some female engineers come through the rotation too, which is neat to see. So I think, it's becoming more prevalent that agriculture is a friendly place for women when it was maybe thought as more of a man's environment or world years ago. So it's great to see, more women going into college careers that are agricultural related, because they want to work in agriculture or they want to come back to the family farm. I recently met a gal that has her own farming operation. That's more rare and unique, but again, it's great to see a young gal that says, hey, I want to carry on the family farm operation and I'm going to run it, as a daughter of, my dad that had the farming operation before and the next generation. So that's cool to see when you see the female run farms as well, which we're occasionally seeing now too.
So Susie, you've lived it, you've worked it, you've got experience. What advice do you have for a young woman seeking a role in the ag industry these days?
Yeah, I think for a female going into the ag industry, one of the things that I've seen over the years that maybe has caused some friction as you look at, men versus women in ag is if a female comes in insecure, know-it-all, not respecting others, then that's obviously going to create tension with anybody you work with. But I would say what I've seen in the past when there's been tensions because someone is a female, it is more because there's maybe an attitude of whatever, insecurity or whatever. So, my advice is, and what's always worked for me is I don't really think of myself as, okay, I'm a female in ag. I mean, I just think of myself as a fellow human being working with other fellow human beings, and it's not about necessarily I mean, yes, I'm female, but am I in this role because I'm female? Well, no, I'm in this role because I love what I do, and it's what I grew up with. So I think for a woman entering ag, my advice would be what served me well is listening and learning from others and being respectful and just having a good can-do attitude. I think those things really serve us well. And of course, having integrity, and no matter what we do, like I said before, that's part of our core values. It's to have an individual mindset of integrity and how we operate and treat people, because that creates trust in others and how they work and relate with us. So, I think those things, along with just a good hard work ethic, because, all of us in ag is hard work, but it's fun and rewarding at the same time. And so I think if you have a good attitude and the good work ethic and respect others and have integrity, I think those are the things that will serve young females well entering the world of ag.
How do you keep a positive work balance? I think sometimes we women are pulled in all directions.
Yeah.
We want to be the work, the great employee, the great wife, the great mom. How do you keep all of those balls in the air successfully?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and I guess I'm thankful that I was gifted with the ability to stay relatively organized and multitask. And my husband and I, we waited till we were married about 13 years before we had our first child, because we were both involved with our businesses. So we waited a little bit later in life to start having kids. And, in those early years of marriage, when we were both growing our businesses, it was more conducive to being able to work more hours, that were needed at the time for where the businesses were at. But yet we still made time for each other, and to do things and get away from work. But when I first came back to the company, it wasn't unusual for me to put in 50, 60-hour weeks, just both at the office and with things that I would be doing at home after hours and on weekends. And, there were times I would be back in here on the weekends. And so that was needed and very much something that I had to do those early years. But again, part of that work we did over the years and really bringing in the right leaders that can help carry on the vision and the mindset. We just got a great team of leaders in our company. And so now that we have two young children at home, 7 and 5-year-old at home, it's really allowed for, while I'm still involved in the business and we still have a farming operation and he still has his business, I don't have to work the horrendous hours consistently like I used to. So it's a much better balance. And one of the things that was great when I was growing up is my parents always included my brother and I in whatever they were doing, and we do the same with our girls. So when we do need to be out and about and doing things, if I need to come out here on a Saturday because we're working some overtime in the factory, I'll sometimes bring them with me, and they love to come to the office and be out here when I'm out here. So we've really immersed our girls too, and just doing whatever we're doing. And the important part is that we're being together as a family, and that I do have time that we just focus on them and put the work and the stuff aside. But I think as a whole we do that pretty well. And there's always a lot of balls in the air in our household. But my husband and I always joke to each other that life wouldn't be fun and exciting if we didn't have a lot of balls in the air. And that's just something that we've been used to since day one of our marriage. And, it was something different for my husband because he didn't grow up in a family business, but we dated 5 years before we married, and he got used to being around my family and just the random, you might think you're doing X, Y, Z on a weekend, and then all of a sudden plans might shift and you do something completely different. But he found that fun and exciting to just be doing different things and having a lot of variety, and he loves that today. So I think that's a good thing. Otherwise, probably would have driven him crazy. But, at the same time, you do have to be careful to balance things, because it's easy as a business owner to just be constantly thinking about the business, and that's not healthy either. It's important to focus on the business, but it's also important to focus on the family time together, and we do try to balance that. So.
Where do you love to get away? Where's like your peace and solitude?
What's our happy place?
Energizing. Yeah.
Well, It's kind of interesting. I do like to travel, and we travel as a family, and we go different places, and our girls like to go different places. And probably one of the most relaxing things we do as a family is where my husband and I live. We've got 600 acres of timber and farmland connected to our property, and we've got ATVs, and so in the warm weather months, we spend a lot of time outside, and our girls love to ride the ATVs with us, and we've got a whole bunch of trails that go through our timber. And honestly, what I find the most relaxing, I used to find it more relaxing to just get away and go somewhere, and maybe more so when it was just my husband and I, because it's easier to travel with two maybe than four, even though our girls do travel well. But I find it most relaxing to just be outdoors and go out, in the timber, and it's like just you're out in the country and you're out in nature, and we've got farmland that surrounds that. And then of course, in the spring and fall we're planting and harvesting and doing that, which our girls like to ride along with that as well. But I find it most relaxing to, when the weather's nice, to be outdoors and in the fresh air. Whether we do a little gardening, and seems like we've got always some different type of outdoor project that we're doing, but I find that most relaxing. And then in the winter months, when the weather isn't as conducive to being outside, I'm an avid reader. I read a lot of different books, whether fiction or nonfiction. I have a variety of things that I like to read. So I spend more time with what little free time I have doing some reading in the winter months. And then, we enjoy being with people and friends. And so we'll kind of incorporate friends in whatever we're doing too. So wide variety of things. We like to do some boating and outdoor recreation that way. So I guess I would say if it involves nice weather and being outside, there's just a variety of things that we enjoy doing.
I think that's one of the beauties of being involved in agriculture. Growing up, it's just a way of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not really something is so special, or sometimes it's not so special. You can't go and do what you want when the weather's right because you're in the field.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love is that it's family also. And, being the mom, being the sister, being the woman, like, we can include that family, and you're not apart from each other. So
Mm-hmm.
Bringing your kids along, I say, train them early, train them often, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So Suzanne, Kinsey's got a great portfolio of different equipment. I guess just for fun, do you have a favorite piece of equipment?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, I enjoy using all the equipment, whether we're planting or harvesting or doing tillage. Tillage is kind of a somewhat mindless, where you just, not a lot to it. Of course, planting has become pretty efficient as well. There's just more to watch and pay attention to when you're planting, unlike tillage. So they each have kind of their different unique aspects. Probably one of my favorite seasons is fall. I've always enjoyed fall and harvest, and just the weather and the colors of the changing leaves, and being out in a combine or a tractor and grain cart in the fall. So that's a tough one because I enjoy using all the equipment. Planting is probably the most rewarding because, you get to see once you've planted the crop, seeing it emerge, and the beautiful crop as it's growing is really rewarding. But at the same time, it's also rewarding to see it come out of the field in the fall and know that you've got a good harvest and getting ready for the next year. So.
For those tuned in, we've been listening to Susie Veach, President and Chief Marketing Officer of Kinsey Manufacturing. She's been telling us about her path as a woman in agriculture. Susie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great talking with you both.
We have a special guest, Mackenzie Gettler, FFA advisor at ADM High School in Adel, Iowa. Mackenzie Gettler has been an FFA advisor for more than a decade. Originally from Menlo, Iowa, Mackenzie graduated from Iowa State University in 2010 with a degree in agriculture and life sciences education. Before joining the ADM School District as an FFA advisor, she was a teacher and FFA advisor at Orient-Maxburg High School for 5 years. In her free time, she enjoys showing horses, playing with her dogs, fishing, gardening, being a mom to her 2 kids, Gage and Hazel, and they're cute, by the way, and working around the farm, which she shares with her husband, Brett, south of Casey, Iowa. Thanks for joining us today, Mackenzie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your background.
Sure. So, like you mentioned, I grew up in Menlo, Iowa. I kind of lived on what I would consider to be a hobby farm. I did actually, after graduating from high school, I did actually also attend Kirkwood Community College in the area of equine science technology. So in 2005, I graduated from Kirkwood and actually moved to Florida and worked on a horse farm for a few years. While I was down in Florida, I kind of worked with a lot of youth down there. And so it kind of helped me decide to come back to Iowa State. And yeah, so I graduated from Iowa State. I've been doing the teaching gig for 12 years now. So this is year 12. And like you mentioned, my husband and I live on a hobby farm southeast of Casey. So kind of a diverse background, I suppose, in agriculture.
Have you always wanted to work in the ag industry? Did you think that that's where you would end up?
Yeah, it's kind of when I think back on it, I always had an interest in animal science, just like every young kid does, right? And I wanted to be a vet when I was younger until I worked at a vet clinic. And then I decided I did not want to be a vet anymore. But I've always been interested in agriculture and also working with youth. Some of my favorite things were when I was in high school, I got the opportunity to be able to do some job shadowing with some elementary teachers. And I also got to work at the vet clinic. So I think I've always kind of liked ag and youth. And so when I ended up deciding to come back to be a teacher, it just kind of merged itself together. Who doesn't want to work in agriculture, right?
So as you were growing up, Mackenzie, what were your influences? You know, we talk a little bit in these podcasts about mentorship and things like that. Were there people that influenced you as you thought about agriculture specifically?
Yeah, I think probably the folks that mentored me the most were lots of people kind of helped me along in my journey, I suppose. But I would say friends and family. A lot of my friends were ag kids and worked and lived on farms. And so I spent a lot of time with them learning about agriculture in different areas. And then, of course, I would also say my FFA advisor, Dan Wilson, of course, was pretty influential in that too. So I think probably the combination of those people, my friends and family, and of course my ag teacher, kind of pushed me in that direction.
Okay, so you said that a lot of people had mentored you and made a difference in your life. Tell us about your role as an ag advisor, ag ed and FFA advisor. How do you make a difference with your students? What's important skill sets you want them to leave your classroom with? Tell us what a day looks like.
Oh my gosh, a day in the high school ag room. Yeah. So ag teacher is not just being a teacher. There's so much more to being involved with agriculture and being an FFA advisor. I was kind of thinking this week as we're in our contest preparations. It's kind of contest and app season right now. Right now, I think I'm more of like a coach and an event planner because we're hosting district convention the first week in March. So we are, right now, our roles change kind of. So in addition to being able to teach and educate students about agriculture, I play a lot of different roles. And I think some of the things that we really want to instill in our students might not be so much the technical stuff, because they can learn that stuff in college and in training, but more things like teamwork, communication, integrity, responsibility. I think those are all things that we really try to focus on through ag programs and FFA, in addition to trying to get our kids as much experience through FFA or SAE projects that we can.
Where you're at in central Iowa, I mean, obviously we've got a lot of rural area, but you also have a lot of students who probably don't have a lot of on-farm experience. What does that look like for your classroom and for the students that are in your ag classes? What kind of composition is there?
Yeah, so in Adel, obviously, there's a lot of agriculture, but our community is growing exponentially. And we have a lot of kids that are not going to go back and farm. But what a big thing about the National FFA organization has tried to do is try to help us explain to kids that even if you're not going to go home and farm, there is a job for you in agriculture. In fact, we always say this all the time, 2% of the people that work in ag are production folks. So who are all the other 98%? Those are all the people that work for Stein or work for a feed company or research in food science. So just because you're not going to farm, that doesn't mean that there's not a place for you down in the ag room.
Awesome. So, we've said that you can be, in business, you can be in law, education, research, grain merchandiser, an agronomist, horticulture, so many different facets. How do you introduce that to your students and show them that they can be involved? How do you go about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with trying to match student interests with career opportunities in ag. Right now, I have a lot of students that are in my intro class that are maybe interested more in like the natural resources aspect of agriculture. So what we try really hard to do is kind of match their interest and have them do career research, job shadowing, get them hooked up with a work experience SAE project in that area where we can try to maximize their interests and try to help them as they continue to pursue that potential career path. Yeah, so we drive it home a lot. We talk a lot from the very beginning that, hey, there are so many career opportunities in agriculture that we can find a spot for everybody.
What do you learn from the students that come through your classroom?
All sorts of stuff. Gosh.
You probably learned about some of their parents, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, the wisdom of their parents. Absolutely. Well, all sorts of things, like how to make a great TikTok. I mean, that's one thing. No. They show us all sorts of things, whether it might be new technologies that they're learning about, but it could also be, they do a great job at showing us teamwork and communication and how they overcome obstacles, et cetera. So I learn things from kids all the time. It's kind of hard to think of a specific example. There's just lots of things that they teach us. Patience. Also, how to be better teachers and how to be better cheerleaders and advocates for them. I think over the 12 years, I've just learned a lot. Again, kind of back to the fact that our high school ag programs are maybe not so much technical anymore, but more about trying to help them along in their post-secondary explorations. So just trying to piece those interests and career opportunities with them and get them experience in something. I'll use welding as an example. Sometimes we have girls that don't think that they can do welding, right? And which actually, if we can get them to overcome that apprehension of starting the welder and trying to lay down a bead, they can be such great welders and they can be so successful in that area. And so it's just that, why? Why is that just for boys? You know what I mean? Why can't you get into ag systems technology? Why can't you try some of those mechanical areas? You know what I mean? Why does it have to just be for boys? And so I think it's just, again, if they have an interest in that area, it's more of cheerleading and coaching, and you can try it. Let's get you some experience and let's get you going down the right path.
Would you say on the side that you're a pretty good welding teacher?
I actually right now am not teaching welding.
Oh, okay.
We do that through our industrial tech department at ADM High School. But I love welding, stick welding. I always kind of laugh. I share this story the first time at Orient Maxburg, because I did teach it down there, that I fired up an oxyacetylene torch. Like all the boys hid behind the tractor because they thought that I was gonna, blow something up. But it's fun, and I actually enjoy that area of trying to teach students some of those kind of basic skills. But we have some students that do also welding at DMAC up at Perry Van Kirk Academy and are very successful through that program too. So I don't get to teach it right now, but it's definitely something that I enjoy.
Can you teach me how to weld?
Yeah, sure can. Sure can. I'm going to teach you on a cracker with some cheese first, and then we're going to go at it. Yeah, it'll be great. Yeah.
Mackenzie, you've had enough time. I think you've had students getting out into the industry. Are there things you look back on that you say, that's something that was instilled through our classes for people who are out in the working world?
Yeah. I think one thing through Ag Ed and FFA that I think all of our students have just grown tremendously in are in those areas of they are just tremendous leaders. We have so many students that have gone on to take on leadership roles in college and in their communities. And it's just kind of exciting to see the steps that they've taken to be involved in leadership and where they're at now. Same thing with public speaking. That's one thing that I just, from the time that they are freshmen to even when they graduate high school, it's just amazing to see their progression and their confidence in being able to be a speaker in front of other people. And that's translated into them, again, in those leadership roles out in their communities. Also with FFA, we're always really proud of the fact that we teach kids parliamentary procedure. So then when they go accept these leadership roles, that they know how to run meetings and, be efficient in things. So those are just a few examples of things collectively that it's really exciting to see our students being able to do and do well.
A really neat story from 1 or 2 years ago was I like to come in and do some judging, right?
Yeah.
Before contests. And I remember doing some coaching on the side, and those freshmen are just so scared and they're shaking and they're for conduct of meetings team, right?
Yeah.
And who's going to talk? And you can just tell they are so nervous. And then you watch the sophomores who were just in their shoes last year.
Oh,
and they are confident and they're giving them feedback and they are so excited for them. And when you think, wow, that was just a year ago, look where those kids have grown, you just make such an impact. And that growth is just a year. You can just see how they grow by leaps and bounds. And that's super exciting to watch their confidence increase so much.
Yeah, 100%. I just had one of my upperclassmen that was giving the conduct team some feedback a little while ago, and I was like, I am very impressed. You are giving them amazing, amazing feedback. You know what I mean? And so props to that student for being able to have the confidence to do that. So yeah, they do great. Those freshmen, they get so good. Yeah.
It's fun to watch.
Yep, they're awesome.
So being a woman in ag, you are walking the walk every day. How do you reach a positive work balance? You've got kids, you've got family. What does that look like?
Yeah. So it's tough. But I think that's one thing about the ag community is that we kind of understand sacrifice. And we understand that sometimes we have things that we have to do for work. And we put so much of our heart and soul into it, I think, in the ag community. And that kind of translate to my job too. So my family understands that I do spend a lot of time at school. But the one thing I want to say about that is the other teachers will always be like, man, you spend so much time at school. And I wouldn't do that if I didn't really truly believe in those kids that I have. And I know that's really cheesy to say, but I have just great kids. And that makes the time that we spend at school worth it. You know what I mean? Especially kids that are just very hardworking, that want to put the effort into. One thing I was going to say about that work-life balance is that I make sure to make that when I go home, I am present with my kids. I don't take work home. If that means that I maybe have to stay an extra hour after school to finish grading, etc., once I go home, I leave it at work. You know what I mean? And I spend the time with my kids and maximize my time there. And then when we're ready to reset at school, I'm going 1,000 miles a minute to get home as quickly as I can. So it's hard, though. Of course, we put in a lot of time, but we enjoy doing it.
I think that's the passion behind so many things in the ag industry. You know, something I think about is the long hours, the hard work, staying till the job's done. But that's how we're raised, right?
Yeah.
And it's that work ethic that you hope goes on to the next generation also. And gosh, you play a daily impact in that, and that's exciting.
It is exciting. I have the best job. You guys probably say that too, but I have a pretty cool job. I love being an ag teacher.
Listeners to our podcast, what would you like them to know about the work you do, both as an ag instructor, as an FFA advisor?
Okay, I want them to know just what a positive impact FFA and ag ed has on students, and to make sure that you support those programs in your local communities, because the students that we turn out of our ag classrooms are amazing. They are great communicators. They are confident. They know how to speak and interact with other people very well. So they're awesome programs, and I just want them to know how much hard work and effort comes into those and make sure that they support them.
What can business owners, parents, community people do to help keep that momentum?
Yeah, all sorts of things, whether it be, advocating for your programs, like maybe through your school board or with your school board to make sure that they continue to support those programs. Same thing with possibly your legislators and making sure that they're supporting your programs as well. A lot of local chapters will also have an alumni and supporters group, which doesn't mean that you have to have been previously an FFA, but it's anyone that's going to help support the chapter at a local level, whether that be on an advisory committee, whether that be like Renee, who will sometimes help train or give feedback to contest teams. My alumni and supporters will help chaperoning different events from time to time. So that's one way. If your local chapter has an alumni and supporters group, that's one nice way to do that too. So those are just a few ideas of ways that you can get involved. Also too, there are always opportunities for judging at different events. So with the FFA, we have leadership and skills contests, where you can participate as a judge in all sorts of different contests, such as public speaking or ag issues. What else? Ag impact. So job interview. We've got all sorts of contests. This is contest season for us, so getting involved in that capacity as a judge as well. Just a few ideas.
Yeah.
Do you have any funny stories or any moments you learned something over the years you weren't expecting?
Funny stories. Oh my gosh. Students are hilarious. Just a couple things. I remember one time we were at National. Learn to make sure that you do not lock your keys in your Suburban when you are in the middle of nowhere in Versailles, Kentucky at a tobacco farm with no ability to be able to unlock the school Suburban with a whole bunch of students. Same thing with keeping track of cameras that may or may not get lost at certain places where you have to wait at the police station to get your FFA camera back in Indianapolis because it got left on accident in a park. So just some fun stories like that. But again, the kids just make all sorts of memories for us. Those are just a few that come to mind.
And we are very grateful as parents for all that you put up with our kids.
Oh, yeah.
For those tuned in, we've been listening to Mackenzie Gettler, who has generously shared her experiences with us on what it's like teaching the next generation of women and students in ag. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mackenzie.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
We have a special guest, Jennifer Marion, who's the FFA advisor for Woodward Granger Community School District. She grew up around her family's row crop farm in central Illinois and decided to hone her passion for agriculture to pursue her bachelor's degree in agriculture and life sciences education at Iowa State. Since graduating from Iowa State, she has taught ag for the past 4 years, 3 at Easton Valley High School in Preston, Iowa, and started at Woodward Granger this past fall. Thanks for joining us today, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us about your background.
So I grew up I grew up in town in Danvers, Illinois, but my family row crop farms. So I grew up around corn and soybeans, helping out where I could in the summertime. And then that kind of spurred my passion without even realizing it. My dad died when I was young, which is actually what spurred me into taking ag classes in the first place. I was dead set on being a mechanic for a while, and I also was a competitive swimmer in high school. So I hurt my shoulders competitively swimming and decided turning wrenches was not going to be it for me anymore. And then I was talking to my ag teacher one day, and she's like, have you ever thought about teaching ag? Like, if you can't decide what else you want to do, because I knew I wanted to be involved with ag still. And she was like, have you thought about teaching? And since that day, I was like, oh, I guess I'm going to go be a teacher. And a lot of it spurred from, my dad was an FFA and did a lot of contests. And one day I was looking through our attic and found all of the plaques. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I should try FFA. And really, once I tried that, the rest is history. And here I am.
So you mentioned your ag teacher. Mm-hmm. We know what a role you guys play with our high school youth, right?
Yeah.
What was it that teacher said that made you believe that you could do or pursue a career in ag?
I think part of it was in my intro to ag class, I was a sophomore. I didn't start taking ag classes till I was about a sophomore because of other conflicts in scheduling. And so at that point, I was kind of already a leader in the classroom. I was a sophomore in a class of freshmen. And so a lot of times when they weren't understanding stuff, I was already helping them with it. And she was just like, hey, you're already doing it, and it looks like you enjoy what you're doing. Why don't you take this and make it a career?
Very good.
So you're involved in FFA. And any other early influences?
I was also involved in 4-H, and I would say throughout my ag career growing up, I was definitely way more involved in 4-H than I was in FFA, and that always surprises kids. And like, what? Like, I thought you would have been president. I was like, no, I was president of 4-H for multiple years in a row. FFA, I was just a standard member going to meetings and participating, but I never took that leadership role in those instances.
What were the key things you feel like that you took away from your experiences both in FFA and in 4-H as a youth?
So for FFA specifically, I took away that you don't even have to be the leader to be a leader. You're not the leader. Everybody is there leading together. Everybody's competing. Everybody's doing everything together. And so you still belong even if you're not one of the popular officer members, if you're not somebody who's showing livestock with each other every weekend, you still feel like you belong. 4-H kind of taught me more that there's also a community outside of the people that you grow up with. So 4-H, since it wasn't associated with school, I got to know a lot more people and kids that were homeschooled that I would have never met if it hadn't been 4-H. And so just learning how to network that way is really where I learned that from, was from 4-H.
The ag industry gives us a lot of friends, don't they? Yes. No matter which facet you're involved with. I think that's priceless. To have friends that you've been friends with for decades, for some of us that have been older, and people who have made a difference early on and grown with you throughout life. That's exciting. Yeah. So speaking of that, obviously you're growing kids every day. How do you think you can be a difference maker?
I just think being there, supporting them, and helping them grow into whoever they want to be, and giving them the skills that, yes, I'm there to teach agriculture every day, and I want to teach them the content they need to know, but I think more importantly, teaching them how to problem solve and be a critical thinker, and how to be resilient. So even when things don't go your way, how to bounce back and come back from that is really what I'm there for, and what I enjoy about it, and how I'm helping kids is just giving them those life lessons in more of a low-risk environment that they get to experiment and play around, where they're not getting fired from a job for doing it, for example. They're learning what's okay and what's not okay in my classroom, and that's okay. So sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's very chaotic, but those kids are learning regardless of if we're getting to our lesson that day or if it is just, hey guys, we need to talk about something that's going on in somebody's life, and we need to work through that together.
So because we're talking about Women in Ag Month, how do you think you specifically can make a difference in a young female's life? How do you encourage them to get involved?
So actually, I have a couple freshman girls right now who like to talk about women in STEAM every day, because it started off with women in STEM. I was like, hey guys, did you know actually sometimes STEAM, I know a lot of times we think about art as the A in STEAM, but a lot of times it's also agriculture. So now anytime we're doing something that is traditionally a boys' activity, so we went through ag mechanics stations, like when they were welding, they're like, women in STEAM, and shouting it around. And so I think just, giving them the opportunities to try things that people may typically see as boy things, helps empower them. And just being a leader myself as a woman in agriculture, some kids, only see men in leadership roles. And I think just, being there helps not only the females in my class, but also the males see women as an authority figure, as somebody to look up to, as somebody to be your mentor, whatever it may be. I think just being present and giving them opportunities to do things that are uncomfortable for them is most important for me.
I think one of the great things about agriculture is we all have to work together, right? We all have our piece of the puzzle, be that, the accountant, the salesman, the insurance, the agronomist, the welder. It's such a big community, and I think that's a great life lesson that you have to deal with people. Sometimes people you want to deal with, sometimes people you don't want to deal with, and I think that gives them some real hands-on experience that it takes a whole community.
Yeah, for sure.
So the community that you are in, working in, is a rural area, but, like everywhere, it's surprising how many young people don't have direct experience on the farm, even in an area like that. So for young women who are in, freshman year of high school, as you're trying to recruit new students and how do you promote FFA and your ag studies to students so they can decide if that's something they want to pursue?
So all 8th grade students get to take Ag Exploratory. So that's the first step is they're getting exposed as middle school students. They take FCS classes, they take Spanish classes at that point, they take art classes at that point. So kind of all the extracurriculars get a chance to sell ourselves. And a lot of what I talk about in 8th grade to kind of hook the kids is just that they're going to be the future someday, whether they're in agriculture or anywhere else. But our future is also getting a lot more populated, and we need to learn new ways of doing things. And so a lot of the focus is you guys are going to be the leaders. You guys are going to be the ones making the changes, the politicians, all these things. And so let's start thinking about solutions that we could come up with now. So that's kind of how I start marketing it. And then once they're freshmen, they can take Intro to Ag. And then I'm also working on changing up a lot of classes right now to fit student interests. Being a new teacher, I get to see where the interests are different now. And so switching up curriculum and getting like the kids that want to be vets. And, I want to start a vet science curriculum eventually. We're working on getting a plant science curriculum and expanding some of our facilities. So we currently have a greenhouse, but I would like to get a bigger and better one and work with the school and maybe donate some food into the cafeteria. So that's a plan that's kind of in motion right now. We also have a farm. Right now the farm is kind of sitting just for me taking over. It's a big project, but eventually that'll become a learning farm where students can learn about chickens being raised, about cattle being raised, hopefully, if I get it all going. This is like a 10-year plan right now, but just getting experience with livestock and having a place to learn about it. And a lot of kids, once we have that up and going, a lot of kids are like, I just want to go see what that is and take a class just to go see what it is.
So you're investing a lot of your own personal time, talents, resources. Why? Why do you believe in that?
Like I said, these kids are just going to be our future, and I want to get them the most prepared that they can be to make the decisions in the future, to make sustainable choices that can keep going, as well as like learning how to advance with technology and stuff, because I want our future to be better. And I just see that potential in those kids. So they, like I said, they're going to be the leaders. They're going to be our politicians. They're going to be our farmers. They're going to be our parents in the school district eventually. And they also just need to know that they make a difference and that they will make a difference and that somebody believes that they will, and to see the importance and why they're doing what they're doing.
That's exciting to hear, for obviously on behalf of Stein Seed Company, we thank you for that investment because, we employ those people and we need people from research to accounting to every area within the company. And that's pretty exciting to know we've got people out there raising up that next generation. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you for giving me a reason to help them grow and jobs for them to go to.
So you talked about a 10-year plan that's, really visionary. It's looking into the future. How do you talk to your team, your young kids who, don't have that, maybe all of that vision, right? Mm-hmm. You're trying to set them on a path, and how do you work with them towards setting those goals?
So I definitely start, especially with this first year, I'm starting with, a lot of the leaders that were there when I arrived. And we're looking at revamping FFA to be what they want it to be and what they see as being important for them. And so just starting with what they believe is important is going to help bring the younger kids up as well, because they're seeing, I believe that an FFA chapter is the students' organization. So it's not about what I want, but what the students are interested in, what they feel motivated to go and do. And so that's really where it starts, and then it's problem solving from there and piecing the puzzle together from there. Students are really interested in this. How can I connect them to industry somehow, or how can I connect them to a contest? And a lot of times it just takes building a relationship with students that they trust you enough to let you guide them in a certain direction, and they trust that it's going to lead somewhere. So a lot of the first steps are just relationship building and giving them some leadership in it as well.
So one of the things we've talked about in a previous podcast episode is that those of us who've been in the industry a while have seen the role, females taking on larger and larger role, and they're a larger and larger part of the ag population, let's say. I guess I'm curious, do your students, are they aware of that? Maybe do they know that? Or is it just something that they accept as there are more equal opportunities today than there were, maybe in the past?
I'm not really sure if they see it or see any discrepancy. I know when I was in high school, it was I knew I was going to maybe struggle a little bit being an ag teacher. People warned me that, it's a male industry. And actually, I have a lot of female ag teacher friends, and there's a lot of them in Iowa as well. I want to say most of them in Iowa these days are even turning more female. And I think it's just, they don't see it just because I don't necessarily present information that way. And a lot of times they see their moms involved in the farming, whether it's in a big way or not. They just don't question that males would ever be like, no, you don't know anything. And there's exceptions. There's definitely going to be some kids that are like, oh, females don't belong. And I'm like, well, I have news for you. We do.
Yep.
You know, you said you heard that maybe you would have issues being a woman in your position. Have you had? And is there any really big challenges, obstacles you had to overcome? And what'd you learn from that?
I don't know if there were any super big obstacles. Both of my job positions, I followed a woman as well. So both of them, there's been a female teaching there before me. But I did, sometimes it's a respect thing, especially with, and I think it's a teenage boy thing more than an agriculture thing, just learning how to take that authority. But overall, I really haven't had too many challenges.
What would you advise for a young woman wondering about obstacles going into the ag industry?
For advice, I mean, obstacles are going to be a part of life, whether you're doing something in a male-dominated industry or a female-dominated industry, you're going to have obstacles either way. I think you just need to find what you're passionate about, and if that is agriculture, take those obstacles as they come and just keep fighting through them.
Very good. I hear you talk about problem solving, critical thinking. You know, it's clear that you have a passion, and I like to say you can't train passion. You either have it or you don't. So it's so important to find the passion for what you're going to do in life, right? And I can just hear that. And I think we're so lucky to have you, again, raising up our students and just encouraging them.
Yeah, I always say the best part about my job is that it's not really at work. I just get to go to school every day, hang out with some kids, give them some advice. I mean, there is work involved. I do work-related things, but it doesn't feel like work because I am so passionate about it. And it makes it easier. When you're just passionate about something, take that passion and run with it.
Makes life fun, doesn't it?
Yes, a lot more fun.
Good for you.
As an ag ed instructor, how do you interact with the community and with businesses toward helping guide these young people toward hopefully what they hope are future careers?
So especially with rural school districts, one of the easiest steps to do is just to be involved, like go to basketball games, go to football games, and just be present and around. It might be going to a school board meeting, and then those people often also are business owners. We also, in the agriculture education world, have what we call advisory committees, and we're working on building one, but those are people in the industry who are going to tell us what if we're teaching what is correct, if there's things changing, if they think for our area we need to be teaching something different. So really just getting a strong advisory council going, and then like an FFA alumni or friends of FFA group. And really once you get started, they just kind of keep coming. So you just kind of got to take that first step and put your foot out there, and it might be going to a community dinner and you start talking about yourself. It could be another teacher knows somebody and mentions something, and then suddenly these people are emailing you, and you just got to be willing to meet with them and talk about their business as well and figure out a way to make it work in your program.
Yeah. So it sounds like from a fairly early stage, you kind of knew the direction you wanted to take, and I think that's really profound. So if you could go back to your younger self and give one piece of advice about the journey you're about to be on, what would you say?
I think I would have to tell myself, it's going to sound really cliche, but just be willing to try new things, because originally I thought I was going to go to the Southern Illinois University, and I was going to go back to my dad's high school and start the ag program back up. And then I ended up going to Iowa State University, and then I decided to stay in Iowa and not even move back to Illinois. And so just be more willing to not even think when an opportunity arises, because it is all going to work out in the end. You'll get where you're supposed to be.
And go Cyclones.
Yes.
For those tuned in, we've been listening to Jennifer Marion, who has generously shared her experiences with us on what it's like teaching the next generation of women and students in ag. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks, Jennifer. Also, thanks to Renee for helping me out with all of our Women in Ag podcast episodes.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this special Women in Ag episode. Stories of inspiring women who are essential in driving the ag industry forward. That's our time for today. I want to thank our guests and our listeners for joining us on another episode of the Stein Seedcast. We'll be back again soon with more expert interviews and insights about all things Stein. And to never miss an episode, subscribe to the Stein Seedcast wherever podcasts are found.
Subscribe to the Stein Seedcast wherever podcasts are found. To learn more about Stein and its elite corn and soybean genetics, visit steinseed.com. Stein has yield.